We hope you had a really great lunch and enjoyed the first half of our day, where we learned about putting purpose into practice. And now we're ready to move into why it's so powerful for businesses. So I would like to introduce to you Jean-Christophe Flatin, President of Innovation, Science, and Technology at Mars Incorporated. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Great pleasure to be with you, in front of you this afternoon. The first question you may have, we talked a lot about scenes this morning, is which scenes did I do to deserve the post-lunch slot? And if you have any cues, any idea in the Q&A at the end, I would love, because next year I would like a different slot, so thank you in advance. Much more seriously, very serious question. Why is Mars here? Why am I here? I'm a business leader. My job is to develop businesses, to create and invent new businesses. Why do I find here? Why do I even come here? And the answer lies in two parts. I'm here because I have a duty. And I'm here because I see an opportunity. And that's what I want to share with you in order to keep you alive and most of you awake and for the coming 10 minutes. The duty is quite simple. I look around the businesses I lead and I see a world being reset every single day. Reset by the consumers that have traded for most of them or some of them their value for money for values for money. Looking for backstory, looking for authenticity, looking for transparency, and voting with their purchases. Our customers have much higher demand on us. They're asking us to show accountability and responsibility for the end-to-end supply chain, and not to keep narrowly our look, stop at the walls, at the boundaries of the company. Suppliers are playing the same game. They ask us to be co-innovators. Having a good contract on a good price is no longer good enough. And probably even more importantly, our associates, which is the way we call our employees, associates, they're demanding, they're challenging us on an everyday basis. If, as leaders, we are not capable to explain why we make the decisions we make, why we invest where we choose to invest, and how we do business, if we cannot articulate that in a principle-based basis, that's not the business they want to work for. It was said very well in the morning, enriching the shareholder does not bring anyone out of bed. Probably apart from the shareholder, but certainly not for the employees. Even more important, looking forward, looking at you guys, future talent, MBAs in the room and others. I feel very often now in interviews that I'm the one interviewed. And the turning point was kind of 4 or 5 years ago. And the level of questions coming my way, I can tell you, is intense, is specific, and is sometimes brutal in terms of awakening reality. So all of that to describe a world around us, all stakeholders being reset, and the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking because we are the first generation of leaders, certainly my generation. I won't be able to look at you, I won't be able to look at my kids and say, I didn't know. That's not possible. I cannot look at you and them in the eyes and say that. We know. The data are out there. We heard them all morning. Poverty, inequality, pollution, environmental issues. The data is there. We cannot ignore it. So the clock is ticking, and it's time to reset our business and reset it at a pace that is consistent with the one where the world is changing. Because what's at stake is to keep our business as contemporary for the next 5, 10, 15 years as it has been for more than 100 years. So that's the big duty part. But with this duty, or within this duty, I see a big opportunity. And this is where economics of mutuality come at play. First, when you're asked to reinvent your business, honestly, that's not the first time we have to reinvent our business. We are 110 years old. I'm not, but the business is. Thank you for laughing. Means you got it. Not always sure how the French jokes are going. So we are 110 years old. And a company does not survive 110 years by chance or by luck. because of one great product or one lucky economic cycle. Yes, it may propel you for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, not 110. So talk about crisis, transformation, world wars, and other events. We've survived all of that, not by luck, but because we are the outcome of 3 generations of entrepreneurs that had in their heart to reinvent the business. In 1947, just post-World War II, at this time the business was led by one of its owners called Forrest Mars Sr. And he found necessary to codify in one-page letter what he wanted to be the guiding principle of the business. And he called that the mutuality of benefits. And he listed in a page that we still have, typed right in typewriter for the millennials. You can look on Google what it was. And he listed the stakeholders that he wanted the mutuality of benefits to be for, because he said that's the only way we will have a lasting business. He started with associates. He named customers, consumers, suppliers. You could say nothing new, expected. Probably much more visionary already. He put communities and competitors on paper as being stakeholders for which shared value should be created. Competitors and communities, 1947. And finally only, he put shareholders. And putting shareholders last in 1947 is pretty visionary. So all of that to say, that's not our first tango of reinvention. Mutuality is a source of inspiration since a long time, but trust me, it's still tough. So what does it mean for us? What do we do with economics of mutuality? We are, first of all, very humble. I am not preaching or teaching. I'm just sharing a journey of learning, a journey of stumbling, and a journey of refining. What you saw this morning from Colleen and Bruno, the set of tools, concrete, pragmatic tools. I'm a businessman. I'm a business leader, for God's sake. So I love business books, but they don't run my business. So my plea to Bruno and Colleen has always been, I love the theory. Give me the tools. Give me the measures. And now we have that. So we have more than 23 pilots going on at Mars around the world where people are doing exactly what you heard Bruno talk about. First, step back. What's your purpose? What's your mission? Once you have that, map your externalities. Who are you impacting? The one that you know that come top of mind, the one that you don't even know, you ignore, or even perhaps you don't even have a clue they exist. Map them. Find the data, find the measures, start measuring, and finally start making decisions in a way that finally reconcile those dimensions that have been opposed for decades and centuries. So yes, we make, as business leaders, everyday trade-off decisions which impact the environment, social and human capital, and financial. But at last, in these 23 pilots, we have a tool in front of us that is helping us make a more informed decision. A decision where you're conscious of what you're doing and you can evaluate the impacts, plural, that this decision may have. So that's a fantastic already progress. That's what's in it for me. The other thing, thanks to the great partnership, thank you again, Colleen, is we have now a new generation of leaders like you guys in the MBA, but also in the executive training session that are learning. But it's not about a few chosen ones knowing. It's about a diffusion of knowledge. And therefore, we have executives being trained. The second class is coming in a few weeks. And I'm very proud to have many people of my team going there. That's great. That's the second thing. And finally, what do we have? I've had the privilege to be here 4 years in a row. That's my 4th participation. You've been kind enough to invite me 4 times in a row. And I've seen the movement being created. I remember the first one, the ideas, the intent was the same. The ideas were probably still a bit more rough, a bit more raw. And they were curious, but sometimes lack of belief looks in the room. And there were a lot of, tell me more. I don't really get it. I kind of get it, but I don't really get it, if I'm honest. So tell me more. And I've seen year after year the movement being created. I've seen the traction all around the world. Academics, research, thought leaders, business leaders, journalists, being at first intrigued, and then, I would not say zealots, because that would be a far exaggeration, but at least believing that there is something there that is worth the attention and the curiosity. And I've witnessed this movement, and I've witnessed as well Bruno and Jay being pulled in many different parts of the world and saying, we are here because we were asked to give a speech or a conference, or we've been invited. And therefore, this has led us at Mars to reflect and explore how can we unlock the opportunities of bringing this new innovation model, this new leadership model, to a broader reach and a broader scale. And this is a bit of a solemn moment, because of this question, I have an announcement to make, and I would like Bruno to join me on stage to do that. It's okay to breathe, by the way. I said solemn, I didn't say stop breathing. My dear friends, so when looking for how to unlock, in order to find the solution, you know where we looked? Very simple. We looked at the very principles of the economics of mutuality. First guidance, look beyond the walls of your own company. Look at the broader resources. There is an entire ecosystem, in our case, an entire ecosystem of like-minded, like-principled, like-passionate people that want the same thing, and they have nothing to do with Mars, and for some of them, or even most of them, they don't want to have anything to do with Mars. And that's okay, because the intent is bigger than being Mars. And the second principle that guided us, Colin, you expressed it so nicely this morning. Knowledge, like trust, and by the way, I add love to your list, is one of the rare currency in this life that when you share it, you have more at the end. So sharing our knowledge is an absolutely mutual choice to make, which is why today I'm very pleased to announce to you Mars' intent to transform our internal Catalyst think tank into a publicly accessible, independent, open platform. I immediately add that we really want Bruno to lead this. And of course, this is not about cutting the link between Mars and Bruno or the team. I'm making sure to stay very close. That's really about transforming the link into something different. We are so proud, so passionate about the fact that our think tank has given birth to that, together with esteemed colleagues and partners. But it's time to enlarge. It's time to give it a chance to fly and benefit many others. So the link will be there. We'll find a way to make it work, but that's a very important moment. So now,
thank you.
Mr. Bruno, what will that look like? Tell us more.
I'd like to start with maybe with a little joke. We have a saying in French. We say like, if I leave you, can I come with you? And this is exactly what we are doing today. Mutual, you can't be really mutual on your own, right? You need other people to be fully mutual. And there is a time for everything, as I said this morning. There is a time to be to be mutual with a few number of people, and then there is a time to expand the blessing of mutuality. And I think before I get into the construct of the open platform, I'd like to just remind two things that we share dearly at Mars. The first one is that there is like a moral responsibility to share what we have discovered. Because it would be, not only would be not mutual, but it would be not moral not to share with the rest of the world the 12 years of research that we've done. But there is also a practical element, which actually there is a practical imperative. There is greater value in sharing this than keeping it for ourselves. So there is this kind of a balance, equilibrium between a moral imperative and a practical imperative. And this is the combination of this moral imperative and practical imperative, which led eventually to the creation of this platform. And we say in business that structure follows strategy. So the strategy is to respond to this moral imperative, but also to be practical enough to make it a reality in business. So the platform is going to look like as a foundation, because we want the foundation to be the place where knowledge, education, research will continue to prosper and to develop, and this will be public information, will be public access. But we also want this foundation not just to be another think tank. We want this think tank to be incarnated in the real fabric of every single business unit that is interested in implementing the principle, the processes of economics of mutuality. So that foundation will own a business, will own an advisory, a consulting practice that actually will be able to work, equipped to work with any single business unit willing to implement mutuality in different stages. So the combination between a foundation and a company actually is, our view, a way to be true to our purpose. Essentially, the purpose of the business is going to grow and expand and make money, and the purpose of the foundation is going to make knowledge accessible to all. And the purpose of profit in this particular case will either be to be reinvested in the business to grow or to be invested in the foundation. So it is my great privilege, and thank you for this announcement, Jean-Christophe, to say now, after 12 years of effort and work in developing this management philosophy, this management theory, we are at a stage where actually a big chunk of the research is behind us. Now, the real value is going to come when all of you actually, and all of you actually are listening to us also on the live link, we're going to implement it. Because the value creation process does not only happen on the bench of Oxford or on the bench of the academic institution. It also happens when business leaders, enlightened business leaders, apply it and are willing to share their success and failures. So it is my great privilege to say that we are already dealing with a lot of businesses at Mars, in poor countries, in rich countries, in the West, in the South, in the East. And we're also working with a large retail company in France, and we are already testing some of these principles in their businesses. So I'd like to make a call, just to say we are very intentional at Mars to transform this great idea into practical principles, practical processes into your business. So feel free to reach out to us, to Jean-Christophe, to myself, to people on my team, if you want to be part of this journey. And my sense is that actually we are on the right side of history, and with the help of you all, we can make history. Thank you. God bless you.
I'd now like to invite two of our MBA colleagues to give a little bit of a response in terms of their experience putting purpose into practice and their views on that topic. So please join me in welcoming Isadora Oliveira and Rahfin Faruk to the stage.
Humans are funny creatures. Every day we wake up in the morning, and instead of just hunting for food or trying to survive like all the other animals do, we wake up and ask questions. Where are my keys? What am I doing in my life? Who, what, where, and most importantly, why? Mark Twain once wrote that the two most important days of our lives are the day we were born and the day we found out why. The why is our purpose. It's what makes us get up in the morning every day and try to actively contribute to society. And yes, you guessed it, it's another purpose talk. And yes, I'm going to use the word purpose a lot in the next few minutes. But what is purpose? It's an overused word. And what is it but a word that is meaninglessly repeated over and over again in boardrooms and PR agencies across the world? Well, I know what it's not. It is not just an empty statement designed to lure customers into buying from you under the disguise of social impact. And it's not something that can be measured in revenues and profit margins alone, although quite often it can feel just like that. Purpose is an ethos, is the underlying sentiment that guides our actions. And when I think about our society today, companies are in the center of so much that we do that it's way past time for them to harness that guiding force and apply it into solving the demands of the future. Now, as you probably know by now, the purpose of business is to create profitable solutions to the problems of the people and the planet. And I think we need to get that right before we start to understand how to actually apply purpose into strategy. I'm not naive to think that all CEOs would just wake up one day and decide they're done making profit, or they're willing to take a big profit cut just because they watch a very inspiring purpose talk. And I know that our society places great value in money as a metric for success. I believe the financial capital should not be the only metric for success. And that's a big conversation that we can keep having later. Purpose, I lost my train of thought. I believe we can keep having that conversation later. Oh, sorry. The beauty of purpose is that it does not demand austerity. Note that I said profitable solutions early in the purpose statement. But it does demand that we stop and ask ourselves, why do we allow businesses to make so many decisions that harm our planet and our people? If not because we actually care about the future of our planet and the people, but because there's a new generation coming. And as we talked about earlier, the new generation is very demanding. 74% of millennials already demand to have a job with purpose. And it's going to take more than one carefully crafted purpose statement in your website to convince them that what you're doing is enough. We need action. We need to apply purpose into business strategy, and we need to do that now. Purpose is only applicable when it's contextual. We need to take it and make it local, apply the local meaning so it becomes concrete, and we can actually apply it into a strategy. And let me illustrate that with a story that's not only personal, but also contextual. In my pre-MBA life, my former employer was a large internet company that I'm sure you've heard about. It's famous for having an amazing work culture, which is true, by the way, and its name rhymes with poodle. Its purpose statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Now, my work in product management and advertising was arguably contributing to that purpose, but it wasn't particularly fulfilling, not for me at least. I felt like I was in a very privileged position, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to give back. So I got involved in the Women Committee at my office in São Paulo, Brazil. Before I continue, there are 3 things you should know about Brazil. 1, it's home to a booming community of micro-entrepreneurs. 2nd, even though it's still pretty much a very sexist culture overall in society, the ratio, it's one of the top countries in the world for gender equality in the ratio of new entrepreneurs. And 3, it's the 4th largest online market in the world, even though most of the new entrepreneurs weren't really using the internet to their favor. So we saw big business potential in bringing the small women-owned enterprises online. And long story short, what I did was to organize an event, a series of workshops that brought business and tech skills to hundreds of female entrepreneurs, just so they could learn how to make the internet work for their favor. And I remember there was this one woman in the corner, and she wasn't really engaging with the workshop, so I approached her and asked what she was making of it. Feedback is always useful. And I was surprised when she said that she didn't think she should be there. She had a very small business, and she just didn't think the event was for her, which to me was very shocking because we created the event for people like her. And we talked for a little bit. We talked about our values. She showed me pictures of her kids, and in the end, she started to engage with the workshop. And last thing I saw on social media, her kids, and her cake selling business are doing very well. So to me, that was mutuality in action. We were able to use that as a window to, yes, showcase the company's products to an audience that was hard to reach. Because remember, they saw the internet wasn't for them. But we also helped these women reap the benefits of improving their skills and moving their businesses forward. This is going to sound very pretentious, but what I did was basically take the information available, make it accessible and useful. And it's about having the freedom of applying my personal purpose to the grand purpose statement of the company. That day, the day of the workshop, I wanted to call Mark Twain and tell him I had found my way, I had found my purpose. But that's not enough. Again, that was a story about my purpose, about a cause that I deeply cared about. And I was lucky enough to have the space and the resources to transform it into action. But what about all the other problems that could have been solved in Brazil or in the world? And there are too many problems that companies could be working to solve in the world, or at least helping not create more problems. And when I left, I noticed there was a certain tension between the intention to do good in the company and the harsh reality of the financial metrics. And as cheesy as that may sound, I think it's really up to us to drive that change. My intent with this speech is to challenge each of you to not dismiss purpose talk, but to use it as a propeller to drive fundamental business change. Thank you.
I might request not only not going after lunch, but also not going after Isadora. During an undergraduate summer, I spent time working in a rural farming village in Bangladesh. There was no running water, no stable electricity, no sanitary latrines, no air conditioning, no easy access to a primary clinic or secondary school. In many ways, it was the direct opposite of the many luxuries we have here in Oxford. It was always warm and sunny, and the meals were seasoned. One conversation I will always remember is with an old farmer. Age gave him a slight hunchback, but he still worked his family's small piece of land. After asking him about some survey questions I just had small chit-chat, and I asked him what his favorite day of the year was. I thought he was going to say his birthday or the day he sold his crops, but his answer still surprises me. He said it was Eid al-Adha, a Muslim holiday. Puzzled, I asked him why that was his response, and he said, Eid al-Adha is the only day my children and grandchildren are able to eat red meat. Out of custom, rich families give poor families meat on that day. Taken aback, thinking about what he had just told me, I thought about where we stood. He worked on the remnants of a British-era tea plantation. Society, in many ways, had moved forward, but his quality of life was not so different from that of his ancestors. Just down the hill, you could buy ice-cold Coca-Cola or imported shampoo. All around him, modern trucking lines took tea and rice out for export. And yet, he told me that his life, the only satisfaction he could get from a meal was one he could not afford. And his lack of access to meat exemplified lack of access to a lot more. This story really provoked me to think about the intersections between business and society, particularly how businesses could leverage their assets and capabilities to help solve large social problems. What if Coca-Cola not only delivered soda on its trucks, but also clean water infrastructure? What if Unilever not only delivered shampoo, but also hygiene education? And this provoked me to a different path in life. After a stint in traditional consulting, where like many of my classmates, I became very good at coloring graphs and making slides to explain previous slides, I joined FSG, a social impact consulting firm founded by Michael Porter and Mark Kramer. There, I worked on shared value projects, helping Fortune 500s think about strategic areas they could pursue that would generate both financial and social returns. From helping the world's largest supplier of eucalyptus pulp integrate smallholder farmers into their supply chain in Brazil, to working with one of the world's largest banks on emerging market financial products, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, I learned that if you could develop a sound business case that engaging with society would generate significant financial returns, companies indeed would act. But my time at FSG left me with a deep unsatisfaction that no matter the work we did, we weren't truly transforming a company's entire business operations, only a small percentage. And the economic development and bottom of the pyramid issues that had drawn me into the field in the first place were rarely touched on in cases, unlike economic of Mutuality's mutual P&L, which takes into account multiple forms of stakeholder value. Shared value relied upon only one: short-term accretion to shareholders. And so, thinking about my FSG experience, I began to explore the tensions that businesses face. If a business wants to be truly purposeful today, to transform its business operations for societal good, it must be bold. But as we all know, very few businesses act in this way because there are tensions between what the short-term market values and the purposeful and long-term strategies that businesses want to pursue. One example of a company truly putting its purpose into practice is CVS Health, an American pharmaceutical retail chain and healthcare company. In 2014, CVS divested from its highly profitable $2 billion tobacco portfolio. Not only did it see societal trends shifting, but it also felt, rightly, that it could not claim to be a purposeful healthcare company while still selling tobacco to its consumers and patients. As you would expect, stock price immediately dropped. The number of short sellers in CVS increased by 5-fold. Now, many companies, after multiple quarters of falling earnings and share price, would revert, say sorry to the market, and move on. But CVS had a different plan. It saw from a study that its 8,900 retail storefronts in the United States were incredibly powerful. Post-divestment, tobacco consumption in areas where it had stores actually went down. Simply put, consumers simply had fewer places to buy tobacco. Thinking about the power of its retail footprint, CVS devised a new kind of strategy. It saw that many of its stores were in urban healthcare deserts, where access to basic products and services, particularly for the uninsured, were almost non-existent. And so CVS began offering basic clinical services like blood tests and referring its patients onward to its large pharmaceutical business. Today, somewhat ironically, CVS competitors like Walgreens are under pressure from shareholders and stakeholders alike to be more like CVS. And what we see now is that CVS is a market leader, and it has transformed the very mindsets and strategies in the business it operates by being bold. And so, as I think about what CVS did, it not only shifted away from an incredibly harmful product category, but it also found a way to make its business work for underserved consumers that benefited their health. I think back to the farmer I met in Bangladesh. The harrowing truth he left me with about the realities of life and what we can do about it. I think about the wisdom that lives outside the walls of institutions. I think about what we learn here needing to matter out there. And most importantly, though I know all of us are here because maybe we're a little afraid of Dean Tufano, what I hear in his story is a call to action, not only from the life he lives, but the lives of so many like him. And I hope that in the businesses we work in, we can be contrarian, we can be stubborn, we can be resilient, we can be bold to ensure that our businesses create a more purposeful world. So this business school is less known to be like the Chicago boys and more known to be like the Saeed Ballers. Thank you.
We're now going to take a seat, and we'll open up the floor to questions from the audience. And if you are in a different room or on your phone, you can also ask your questions on Slido if you visit www.sli.do. Any questions? Oh, there's a question over there, that gentleman.
Hello, thank you. John Manuel from Live Full Inc. Is it possible for the New Catalyst Foundation to spearhead a management quality system based on mutuality and create a quality mark for products and services?
Good luck. Yeah.
I think it's. We're going to start. We're going to start with a focus on helping businesses to transform their performance system. And I'm very happy with your analogy between FSG and economics of mutuality, because I truly believe that it is really when we change the accounting system of a large business that actually you can expect massive impact. Having said that, the next step is obviously to move to the investment side, because once you understand how business works, and eventually there is a business case to show that when you align your practices, your profit, and your purpose, there is a strong business case that actually these are more performant model. Investment are not stupid; they will follow, right? And then with this, there will be a need to provide benchmark and to provide some sort of certification. So there are different types of certification. You can think of certification of people, certification of companies, and to some extent also certification of product. So it's a new field of innovation. So your idea is one of the innovations that we are thinking of, but we have to build the journey step by step. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Next question.
Thanks very much. This makes a lot of sense to me, the economics of mutuality, and it mirrors a lot of the work I did in South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa beyond that. So I'm a firm believer that eventually this will be the way business is done. My concern is, I've heard a lot of the talk today, and the gentleman, is it Irfan? The far left hand, I thought yours was probably one of the most important discussions we heard today, because it brought about this idea of tension between social performance and financial performance. And so while I do agree that in some instances you can have both, I think there's too many examples of where there is a trade-off. So this focus on selling the idea of economics mutuality based on this idea that you can still make a lot of money and do good, is that not... Should we not be saying that in some instances you can, but there's going to need to be some kind of trade-off in the interim until you get, for argument's sake, a society where people eat meat more than once a year, or have access to healthcare, or have access to education, or have access to sanitation?
Perhaps let me start. You stated it very well, saying purpose is contextual. And I think the implementation of economics of mutuality is contextual as well. So there is not one answer, and I think you said it also when you explained the mutual P&L earlier this morning, where you say we don't want to put a price tag on everything. Each asset nature need to be replaced or considered within its own asset nature. So if the impact you're looking at is social, or if the impact you're looking at is environmental, the cost of treating a wastewater cubic meter in Frankfurt, Germany is not the same as the one in Mumbai or Delhi, etc. So what I'm saying is, first, it is and it will remain about trade-offs. And anybody telling you that there is a magic wand and that decisions will be easy is just a liar. I think it will remain tough trade-offs to be made. And I believe in balanced decision. I don't believe there are perfect solutions. If, having done the mapping and just pursuing the example you guys offered to us, it is pretty clear that the social capital impact is disastrous, then yes, it means that the trade-off probably you will make in front of your mutual P&L showing you that is an overinvestment on that type of capital up to the moment where you will see your indicator raised to the threshold that you will have declared as being the minimum you want to raise. Some companies make the commitment about having everyone at least having a living wage salary, etc., etc. So if this is the threshold you want to set, then the mutual P&L will help you see when you've reached that, and then you can make another type of investment, which is about balancing. So I would just say in summary, as soon as you give yourself the duty and the noble mission to balance more than one dimensions, your life will be made of trade-offs. Economics of mutuality and the mutuality P&L equips you or will equip you with finally a robust tool to make informed decision, and this informed decision will vary along the time depending on the objective you give yourself.
So we just wanted to, in the last couple of seconds of the Q&A, we wanted to get a question from the other room, and this question is a little bit longer than the one that I'm going to abbreviate, but we'd like to hear from each of you. Do you think companies want non-financial metrics to be mandated and regulated The rest of the question is why or why not, but unfortunately we don't have time to do that right now. So we're going to go with a do you think that they want it, yes or no, and then people can ask you questions at the end.
You're on stage, my friend.
I think the best companies realize that social and environmental impact, the lens that offers, can generate alpha. So do all companies want to be, regulated in this way? Certainly not. If I was a poorly performing company with a lot of negative externalities, I would not raise my hand for this. But I think, as the CVS Health example shows, as the Mars example shows, there are significant opportunities to be ahead of the regulatory curve here and generate a lot of value for shareholders and stakeholders.
Yeah. I second that, and I also I do second that, but I think that most companies, unfortunately, I don't think they would want it to be imposed on them at this point. I just hoped that at least a few CEOs would have the future vision to be able to see they would be ahead of the regulatory curve. But I think it should be mandated. So different from if they wanted to, I think it should.
Actually, the issue of regulation is that you need to come up with a standardized version of what you talk about. And our position is that because every business is so contextual, purpose is contextual, the context in which business operates is contextual, I think the urgency is really for business leaders to be equipped with management tools, management accounting, not necessarily reporting accounting. Reporting will follow, and it will take time to organize. I was sharing this morning in the session that one of the benefits of the Nazi occupation during World War II in France is that actually before the occupation there were many different systems to talk about accounting. Eventually the Nazi managed to put one system in France. Actually it's probably the only good legacy that the Nazi left in France. So I hope we won't need another Nazi occupation of the world to ensure that we have a formal and standardized P&L. But I think joke apart, I think it's important to start, my view, to start with the tapping into the responsibility of business leaders, equip them with management accounts, and eventually regulation will follow. Regulators always follow. That's my view.
So, and because of time and in very different words, but probably the same thinking, I believe in raise the bar strategy. So when you see a level of regulation that is not where your entire industry should be, we usually take the stand of going further and making it public. And just making it public because we are a business, we are not regulators, and the last thing that should happen is a confusion of roles. But I think by making our commitment or our elevated commitment public, that's an invitation for others in the industry and eventually regulators to raise the bar. But I think all our businesses have benefited from this behavior, and when I mean businesses and categories have benefited for decades about raise the bar strategy. So we will continue, regulated or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it for questions for now, but feel free to ask more questions during the break or later on at our reception in the evening. I'd now like to actually welcome to the stage Professor Bob Eccles, who'll be leading our next panel.